Marcus Thompson stood at the window of his penthouse office, watching the Boston skyline. His company's logo glowed bright against the dawn sky. Thompson Tech, the fastest-growing AI company in America. He smiled, adjusting his $10,000 suit. Today was supposed to be his greatest triumph. "Mr. Thompson, the board is ready," his assistant announced. 20 board members sat around the massive table, their faces reflecting the blue glow of their tablets. Marcus cleared his throat, ready to deliver the news of another record quarter. His phone buzzed. A notification about a mysterious algorithm taking the tech world by storm. Marcus dismissed it. Nothing could challenge Thompson Tech's dominance. "Ladies and gentlemen, our AAI division has..." Another buzz, then another, and another. The board members started whispering, looking at their phones. Marcus felt his stomach drop as he checked his screen. Thompson Tech's stock was falling. Fast. "This meeting is postponed," he announced, his voice tight. 3 hours later, Marcus's driver pulled up to Harvard University. At least here, he was still king. The university's newest building bore his name, the Thompson Center for Innovation. He was today's honored guest at the graduation ceremony, Harvard's most generous alumni donor. "Marcus!" Dean Richardson approached, but something was off in his smile. "There's been a small change in the program." "What change?" Marcus demanded. The valedictorian requested to deliver his speech personally, rather than having it read by faculty. Marcus shrugged. "Fine. Which trust fund kid is it this year?" Dean Richardson's smile tightened. "You'll see." The graduation ceremony began. Marcus checked his phone again. $2 billion in market value. Gone. His hand shook slightly. "And now, our valedictorian," Dean Richardson announced. "A student who exemplifies Harvard's commitment to excellence and perseverance. Please welcome David Walker." Marcus's head snapped up. A young man in graduation robes walked to the podium. Clean-cut, confident, familiar somehow. Then it hit him. 18 years ago, in Harvard's library, a small boy with worn-out clothes, sitting among the books while his father, the janitor, mopped the floors. "Look at this," Marcus had laughed to his friends. "The janitor's kid thinks he's Harvard material. Maybe he can clean these halls like his father someday." The boy had looked up, eyes burning with determination. His father had quietly continued mopping, head down. Now, that same boy stood at the podium, holding a flash drive in his hand. The same flash drive that every tech news site was talking about. The one containing the algorithm that could save or destroy Thompson Tech. David Walker smiled directly at Marcus. "Let me tell you a story," he began, "about a janitor's son and the man who thought he could decide who belongs at Harvard." Marcus's phone buzzed again. Another billion gone. The janitor's son now held the fate of the Thompson empire in his hands. And this was only the beginning. The board members were texting frantically. Marcus's PR team was calling. Parrot. The press was gathering outside Thompson Tech's headquarters. But in that Harvard auditorium, time seemed to freeze as David Walker's voice filled the space. 18 years ago, a wealthy man taught me the hardest lesson of my life. Today, I'm going to return the favor." Marcus Thompson, the king of technology, the pride of Harvard's alumni, felt his empire crumbling, and all he could do was sit and watch as the son of the man he'd humiliated prepared to deliver a speech that would change everything. In his pocket, his phone kept buzzing, each vibration signaling another piece of his empire falling away. But he couldn't look away from the stage. From David Walker. From the consequences of a moment of cruelty 18 years ago that was about to come full circle. The audience sat in rapt attention, unaware they were about to witness not just a graduation speech, but the first act of a story of justice 18 years in the making. Harvard Library, 18 years ago. 7-year-old David Walker sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by advanced math books. His father, James, methodically mopped the marble floors nearby, his Harvard janitor uniform meticulously pressed despite its age. "Daddy, look at this equation," David whispered excitedly. James smiled, his tired eyes brightening. "Show me after my shift, son. Remember to keep your voice down." Elena Walker, David's mother, appeared at the library entrance. Her waitress uniform wrinkled after a double shift, dark circles under her eyes. "James, please, just talk to them." "Elena, not here," James whispered, gripping his mop tighter. "The Thompsons offered to help with David's education," Elena persisted. "Their foundation could." "I won't beg," James cut her off. "We're doing fine." David pretended to read, but his ears caught every word. The Thompsons, the wealthy family everyone at Harvard talked about. Their name was on buildings, scholarships, research grants. The library door opened again. Marcus Thompson walked in with 3 other well-dressed men. David recognized him from the newspaper photos in the recycling bins he helped his father empty. "And this is where I spent countless hours studying," Marcus announced proudly, "though the company seems different now." His eyes landed on David. "What do we have here?" Marcus approached, expensive shoes clicking on the freshly mopped floor. "A future Harvard student?" David clutched his book tighter. James stopped mopping, his knuckles white around the mop handle. "Advanced calculus?" Marcus picked up one of David's books, laughing. "Bit ambitious for a janitor's kid, don't you think?" Elena stepped forward. "My son is gifted. If you'd just consider—" "Mom, please," David whispered, cheeks burning. Marcus's friends chuckled. "Listen," Marcus said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Know your place. This boy might be playing with math books, but let's be realistic. Some people are meant to clean Harvard, not attend it." Professor Chen, an elderly math teacher, watched silently from behind a bookshelf, his hands trembling with familiar rage. At night, Elena packed her bags. "I can't live like this anymore, James. Your pride is costing our son's future." "Elena, please," James begged. "We can find another way." "Marcus's partner offered me a job at their foundation," Elena said, tears streaming. "A real job, James. A chance to help David." "By abandoning him?" James's voice broke. "James." David watched from the stairs of their small apartment as his mother walked out. He didn't know it would be the last time he'd see her for 18 years. In the bathroom later that night, James doubled over, coughing. He stared at the cleaning chemical bottles from work, realization dawning in his eyes, but he said nothing, straightened his uniform, and prepared for another night shift. From his office window, Dean Richardson watched James arrive for his shift. He picked up his phone, dialing a number he hadn't called in years. "It's about Marcus," he said quietly. "We need to talk about what your son is becoming." The school gymnasium buzzed with tension. Mathematics Olympiad regional finals. 14-year-old David sat in the back row, wearing a second-hand suit. His competition badge read, "David Williams," a borrowed name to avoid attention. "You deserve to compete under your real name," Professor Chen whispered, sitting beside him as a volunteer judge. "We both know what would happen," David replied, remembering Marcus Thompson's annual Harvard donor speech last week, the one where he'd successfully lobbied against wasting resources on underprivileged students who can't meet Harvard standards. The competition began. David's pencil flew across the paper, numbers and equations flowing naturally. In the audience, James Walker watched proudly, suppressing another cough. 3 hours later, David stood on stage, accepting first place. A reporter approached with a camera. David's heart raced. One photo could ruin everything. He saw stage. "Sorry, no pictures," Professor Chen intercepted smoothly. "Medical reasons." But one photo slipped through. A small local paper ran the story. "Unknown math prodigy defeats state champions." The grainy image showed David's profile, accepting his medal, and Italy. In a luxurious Boston apartment, Elena Walker's hands trembled as she recognized her son's face. 7 years of silence, and there he was, brilliant, despite everything. %. Meanwhile, at Harvard's administrative offices, James Walker's coughing echoed through empty hallways. Blood appeared on his handkerchief. The doctor's words from his last checkup rang in his ears. Chemical exposure, chronic condition, treatment options. He stuffed the handkerchief away as Dean Richardson approached. "Mr. Walker, exceptional work as always," Richardson said kindly. "His death." "Thank you, sir," James replied, turning away to hide his pale face. In his office, Dean Richardson opened a hidden folder. Thompson Family Trust, private records. His fingers traced a headline from 20 years ago. Promising professor's career destroyed by fraud allegations. Professor Chen's younger face stared back from the article. The dean's phone rang. "Marcus Thompson." "Dad, what's this about a new scholarship program for maintenance staff families?" Marcus demanded. "The board approved it this morning," Richardson replied calmly. "Cancel it," Marcus snapped. "We're not running a charity." "No, son, not this time." David walked home clutching his medal, wrapped carefully in his father's spare handkerchief. A newspaper lay discarded on the street. Thompson Tech announces new AI division. He picked it up, studying Marcus's smiling face in the photo. The same smile from that day in the library. In his bag, a folder contained something else. Documents Professor Chen had helped him find. Records that suggested the Thompson empire wasn't as clean as it seemed. "David!" James called from their apartment window. "Come quick!" David ran upstairs to find his father staring at a letter. Harvard's logo gleamed at the top. "What is it, Dad?" James's hand shook. "They're offering me a promotion. Better pay, better hours." He coughed again, harder this time. David grabbed the letter, reading between the lines. Someone was helping them. But who? And why now? His phone buzzed. "Professor Chen, meet me tomorrow. There's something you need to know about Marcus Thompson." The metal felt heavy in David's pocket. One victory. But the real battle was just beginning. Professor Chen's office was cluttered with decades of mathematical research. David sat nervously as his mentor closed the door. $10,000, Chen said quietly. "That's what Marcus Thompson offered me to stay quiet about you." David's hands tightened on his chair. "What did you say?" "I told him I don't accept blood money." Chen pulled out an old newspaper. 20 years ago, I discovered irregularities in Thompson's trading algorithms. The next day, I was accused of academic fraud. Now, Marcus was just starting out then, but his father's influence was enough to destroy my career. A knock interrupted them. Sarah Thompson stood in the doorway, her designer clothes a stark contrast to the dusty office. "I need a math tutor," she announced. "They say you're the best, David Williams." David froze. How did Marcus Thompson's daughter find him? In the maintenance wing, James Walker's knees buckled. The world spun as he collapsed against his cleaning cart. "James!" A fellow janitor rushed to help. "Someone call medical!" David's phone buzzed during his first tutoring session with Sarah. Text from the hospital. His father was admitted again. "We need to end early," he told Sarah. "Is everything okay?" Her concerns seemed genuine. "Family emergency." David grabbed his bag. "Wait." Sarah pulled out a check. "My father said to offer you this. To stop tutoring me." David stared at the zeros on the check. Enough to pay for his father's treatment. "Keep it," he said, walking out into Colding. Dean Richardson watched the scene from his window. His phone rang. Elena Walker. "I need to see my son," she pleaded. "It's not that simple anymore," Richardson replied, watching David rush across campus. In his hospital bed, James Walker stared at his latest test results. Terminal, without expensive treatment. "Dad, I'll find a way," David promised. "No deals with the Thompsons," James whispered. "Promise me." Before David could answer, Sarah appeared in the doorway. Her eyes widened at James in his hospital gown. "You're the janitor's son," she gasped. "The one my father—" Sarah. David stepped between them. "Sarah, please. Everything makes sense now." She pulled out her phone, showing him a file from her father's computer. Records of systematic harassment, blocked opportunities, targeted audits, all aimed at the Walker family. "I had no idea," she whispered. Professor Chen appeared behind her. "Now you know why I'm helping him." Sarah's phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. "Where are you?" She looked at David, then at James. "Make me understand. Everything." As David began to explain, none of them noticed Elena Walker watching from the hallway, tears in her eyes, holding documents that could change everything. David sat in Harvard's empty halls at midnight, watching his father clean. James's movements, despite his illness, followed precise patterns. Efficient, methodical, perfect. That's when it hit him. "The patterns, Dad. The way you clean, it's like a living algorithm." David's laptop glowed as he typed frantically, translating his father's cleaning patterns into code. Each stroke of the mop became a line of programming, each systematic movement a function. Across town, Marcus Thompson faced his board of directors. "Our AI division is losing ground," an executive reported. "A new algorithm is disrupting everything. We can't trace its origin." Marcus's phone lit up with a text from Sarah. "Tutoring session running late." "Where?" he demanded. "Harvard Library." Marcus froze. The same library where everything started. In a quiet corner, Sarah watched David work. "This is revolutionary," she whispered, understanding the code. "How did you—" "My father taught me without knowing," David replied. "Barrier 2. 18 years of watching him work while I studied. Perfect efficiency. Perfect patterns. A security guard approached. "Miss Thompson? Your father's here." Sarah quickly closed David's laptop. "He can't know." Too late. Marcus turned the corner, seeing them together. His face darkened. "Sarah, car, now." As Sarah left, Marcus stepped closer to David. "Whatever game you're playing." "Mr. Thompson?" Elena Walker emerged from the shadows. "Remember me?" Marcus paled. "Elena." 18 years, Marcus. Time to talk about what really happened. In his office, Professor Chen received an alert. Thompson Tech's stock was falling. The algorithm was working. James Walker sat in his hospital room, watching the business news. His son's code, born from his own cleaning patterns, was reshaping the tech world. "Your son's algorithm," the doctor said, entering with test results. "It could pay for the treatment." "No," James whispered. "Not like this." Dean Richardson stood in his office, holding 2 files. One contained proof of Marcus's past crimes. The other held a secret that could destroy his own son. Sarah burst into her father's office the next morning. "Dad, what did you do to the Walkers?" "You don't understand business," Marcus snapped. "No, you don't understand." Sarah held up her phone. "I saw the code. David's algorithm. It's beautiful, pure. Everything yours isn't." Marcus's computer chimed. "Another billion lost." Elena waited outside David's classroom. "We need to talk about the day I left." "Why now?" David demanded. "Because what Marcus Thompson did, it wasn't just about pride, Carrie. It was about covering up something bigger." Professor Chen rushed in. "David, Thompson Tech is falling. But Marcus, he's discovered where the algorithm came from." David's phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. "Dad knows. He's coming." In his hospital bed, James Walker watched his son's creation change the world. His patterns. Transformed from maintenance patterns into digital revolution, the algorithm continued its work, exposing flaws in Thompson Tech's systems, revealing truths hidden for decades. David stared at his code, at the patterns learned from years of watching his father work. Simple, honest, pure, just like the man who inspired it. "Your student ID is suspended," the security guard announced, blocking David's entrance to Harvard's computer lab. Inside his office, Marcus Thompson smiled, watching through the security feed. His momentary triumph shattered as his phone rang. The board was calling an emergency meeting. Sarah stormed into her father's office. "You can't do this to him." "Watch me," Marcus turned. "And you? Tutoring sessions? Really? Did you think I wouldn't find out?" This time. "Miss Thompson." Dean Richardson appeared in the doorway. "A word about your thesis?" Once alone with Marcus, Richardson's face hardened. "End this witch hunt, or I release the truth about your mother's death." Marcus froze. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me, son." At Massachusetts General Hospital, James Walker's monitors screamed. "Code Blue!" David ran through the halls, his suspension notice crumpled in his hand. Sarah followed. "David, wait. My father's lawyers can't touch you if..." "If what?" Elena stepped out of James's room. "If he sells his algorithm?" "Like I sold his childhood for your father's promises?" The doctors worked on James. David pressed against the glass, watching his father fight for life. "Stay." $5 million, a smooth voice said. Everyone turned. Marcus stood there, checkbook in hand. "The algorithm for your father's complete treatment. Best doctors, best care. Stay." "Don't," Professor Chen warned, arriving breathless. "They threatened my career the same way." Sarah stared at her father. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Stay." "Business," Marcus replied coldly. "Everything has a price." "Like my silence did?" Elena stepped forward. "Tell them, Marcus. Tell them what really happened 18 years ago." His pest. David looked between them all. His dying father, his long-lost mother, his mentor, Sarah, the man who tried to destroy them, and the dean who seemed to know everyone's secrets. His laptop hummed in his bag, the algorithm still running, still exposing Thompson Tech's flaws to the world. Marcus's phone buzzed. The board had voted. Stay. In 1 hour, they would decide his fate. 10 million, Marcus amended, hand shaking slightly. Through the glass, James's eyes fluttered open. He looked at David, then at the checkbook in Marcus's hand, and slowly shook his head. Sarah suddenly grabbed her father's phone, scrolling through his emails. "Oh my God!" "Sarah, don't!" Marcus lunged for the phone. Too late. She'd found it. The document that would change everything. Is this why? She whispered. Is this what it was all about? Desperate. The monitors beeped. James's condition was critical. David had to choose his algorithm or his father's life. But Sarah wasn't done reading. Dad, what did you do? Sprays. The truth about the Thompson empire was in her hands. And Marcus Thompson, the man who thought he could buy anything, was about to learn some things aren't for sale. David stared at his laptop screen. His algorithm had exposed every flaw in Thompson Tech's systems, every hidden secret. One click would destroy Marcus Thompson completely. Your father's condition is worsening, the doctor said quietly. Without immediate treatment, Sarah sat in the hospital waiting room, her father's phone still in her hands, tears streaming down her face. David, you need to see this. The emails revealed a darker truth. Marcus hadn't just blocked David's opportunities. He'd orchestrated Elena's departure, manipulated James's work assignments to maximize chemical exposure, all to protect a secret buried in Thompson Tech's founding. Professor Chen burst in, out of breath. They're coming for my tenure. Again. 2 security guards approached him. Professor, please come with us. No. Sarah stood up. I have proof. Of everything. Marcus appeared, his usual confidence cracking. Sarah, give me the phone. Or what, Dad? You'll destroy another family? Elena stepped forward. Tell them why you really wanted me gone, Marcus. Tell them about the original algorithm. David's laptop pinged. His program had found something. A buried file about Thompson Tech's early days. About Marcus's mother. She didn't die in an accident, Elena said quietly. She found something. Just like Professor Chen did. Marcus lunged for Sarah's phone, but Dean Richardson blocked his path. Enough, Richardson commanded. Marcus, your mother was my wife. And it's time everyone knew the truth. James's monitors beeped urgently in the background. David had to choose, expose the truth, or save his father. Wait, Sarah said. There's more. She held up the phone. Dad's been selling user data. To everyone. That's where his fortune really came from. Marcus's face went white. Sarah, please. The algorithm, David realized. It wasn't just about cleaning patterns, Big Terrace Coast. Professor Chen nodded. That's what I found 20 years ago. What Mrs. Thompson found before her accident. Elena touched David's shoulder. I left to protect you. Marcus threatened to ensure you'd never attend any college if I stayed. Securities and Exchange Commission agents appeared in the hallway. Sarah had sent them everything. Mr. Thompson, one agent said, come with us. Marcus looked at his daughter, his father, the empire crumbling around him. I can fix this. Money fixes everything. No, Dad, Sarah whispered. Not this time. David's laptop completed its analysis. The truth about Thompson Tech. About Marcus's mother. About everything. Ready to be released to the world. James's monitor flatlined. David's finger hovered over the enter key. Justice or mercy? Truth or life? The choice would change everything. The hospital clock struck midnight. Doctors fought to stabilize James as David made his decision. He closed the laptop. Get the papers, he told Marcus. Treatment first, then we talk. Sarah gripped her father's phone tighter. David, what he did. My father's life matters more than revenge. Marcus pulled out the treatment authorization forms, hands shaking, as he signed. A new email notification flashed on Sarah's screen. Her eyes widened. Dad, she whispered. The board meeting. They're not just removing you, they're pressing charges. Elena stepped closer, her own manila envelope in hand. There's something else you all need to see. She pulled out yellowed documents. Marcus's mother wrote this the night she died. Professor Chen, still flanked by security guards, recognized the handwriting. The original proof. Dean Richardson took the letter, his hands trembling. Catherine knew everything. The doctors stabilized James, but his condition remained critical. Through the window, David watched his father's chest rise and fall. The graduation ceremony is in 6 hours, Sarah said quietly. You can't give the speech, Marcus warned David. I'll destroy. You'll do what? Elena interrupted. Everything's already exposed. The SEC has the evidence. The only choice you have left is how this ends. Security guards approached with new orders. "Professor Chen, you're reinstated. Full tenure. Board's orders." Marcus's phone buzzed continuously. Board members, lawyers, reporters. His empire was collapsing in real time. "Read it." Elena pushed the letter toward Marcus. "Read what your mother wrote before the accident." Marcus stared at the paper, his facade cracking. "Mom knew?" "Everything," Dean Richardson confirmed. "Why do you think I've protected David all these years? Catherine made me promise." Sarah touched her father's shoulder. "Dad, we can make this right." Paris. The hospital room door opened. James was awake. "David," he called weakly. David rushed to his father's side. "I'm here, Dad." "Don't let him stop you," James whispered. A speech. Dawn broke over Harvard's campus. In 6 hours, thousands would gather for graduation. Marcus's phone showed the stock in free fall. "A choice," David said finally. "That's what this has always been about." He opened his laptop again. One algorithm. 2 possible futures. Destruction or redemption in tech. The truth about Thompson Tech was already out. But the deeper truth, about family, pride, and redemption, that would come with the morning sun. Sarah looked at her father, then at David. "Whatever you decide, I'm standing with you." The graduation robes waited in David's locker. The speech that could change everything sat ready on his flash drive. The Harvard auditorium buzzed with anticipation. News of Thompson Tech's crisis dominated phones and whispered conversations. Dean Richardson took the stage. "Today's ceremony will be slightly different." 2 security guards flanked Marcus, preventing his escape. Federal agents waited in the wings. Sarah helped James into the auditorium in his wheelchair, Elena walking beside them. Professor Chen sat with other faculty, his tenure pin restored. David stood backstage, gripping his flash drive. The algorithm that could finish destroying Thompson Tech pulsed within, alongside his speech. "And now," Dean Richardson announced, "our valedictorian, David Walker." Marcus tried to stand. "I object." "Sit down," Sarah hissed. "For once, listen." David approached the podium. Thousands of eyes watched. News cameras rolled. 18 years ago, he began, "I sat in Harvard's library while my father cleaned its floors. A wealthy man told me I didn't belong here." He looked directly at Marcus. He was wrong. The audience stirred. Marcus's face went pale. "But this isn't a story about revenge," David continued. "It's about choices, about what we become when faced with truth." He held up the flash drive. "In this drive, I hold 2 things. An algorithm that could destroy Thompson Tech completely, and proof of something far more valuable, the power of integrity." Sarah squeezed her father's hand. Marcus stared at his daughter, really seeing her for the first time. "My father taught me that success isn't about wealth or power," David gestured to James. "It's about doing what's right, every single day, even when nobody's watching, even when it costs you everything." Elena wiped tears as James sat straighter in his wheelchair, proud despite his weakness. "Mr. Thompson," David turned to Marcus, "your mother discovered something about your company 20 years ago, something your own daughter discovered again yesterday. The truth doesn't stay buried forever." Marcus closed his eyes, his mother's letter burning in his pocket. "But today, I'm making a choice." David held up the flash drive. "Not for revenge, but for redemption." He inserted the drive into the podium's laptop. The giant screen behind him lit up. This algorithm, inspired by my father's work, doesn't have to destroy. It can rebuild, transform, make things right." Lines of code appeared, showing a new system, transparent, ethical, revolutionary. "Thompson Tech doesn't need to fall," David announced. "It needs to change now. And that change starts now." Sarah stood up. Then Professor Chen. Then, one by one, the audience rose. Marcus remained seated, staring at his hands, his mother's last words echoing in his mind. "The choice is yours, Mr. Thompson," David concluded. "Redemption or ruin. What's it going to be?" The auditorium held its breath. Federal agents moved closer. Marcus Thompson, titan of technology, stood slowly. 18 years of pride, secrets, and power hung in the balance. His next words would change everything. The silence in Harvard's auditorium shattered as James Walker collapsed in his wheelchair. "Dad!" David rushed from the podium as medical staff converged. "Dead. Get him to the hospital now," a doctor ordered. Marcus watched the scene unfold, his prepared response dying on his lips. Sarah grabbed his arm. Dad, this is your moment. Choose right, for once. Marcus stepped forward, his voice shaking. Stop! Everyone froze. My private helicopter is on standby. It can get him to Mass General in minutes. David looked up from his father's side. Why would you? Because your father deserves to live, Marcus interrupted. And I deserve to face what I've done. Federal agents approached as Marcus pulled out his phone. Get the chopper here, now! While medical staff stabilized James, Marcus turned to face the audience. Everything he said is true, every word. 20 years ago, my mother discovered my first crime. She died trying to expose it. I've spent 2 decades building an empire on lies. Sarah gripped her father's shoulder as he continued. Thompson Tech's board, the SEC, and federal authorities will get full cooperation. Every document, every secret, starting with this. He pulled out his mother's letter, handing it to the nearest agent. The helicopter's roar approached. Go, Marcus told David. Be with your father. We'll finish this later. As James was rushed to the helicopter, Elena stepped forward. I'll go too. If that's okay. David nodded slightly. Professor Chen addressed the stunned audience. In light of these events, the ceremony will continue, Sarah interrupted, taking the podium. Because today isn't just about exposing wrongs, it's about making them right. Marcus faced the federal agents. I'm ready. Wait, David called from the helicopter pad. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office at Thompson Tech. You don't have an office there, Marcus said, confused. He will, Sarah responded. Because while you're facing justice, someone needs to fix what's broken. Who better than the man who wrote the algorithm that exposed it all? The helicopter lifted off, carrying James toward treatment that might save his life. Marcus watched it go, understanding finally hitting him. You're not destroying the company. No, David shouted over the rotor noise. I'm rebuilding it, the right way. Your choice is whether to help or not. As federal agents led Marcus away, Sarah hugged him. Do the right thing, Dad. Finally. Dean Richardson watched it all. His late wife's prediction coming true. Justice and mercy. Intertwined at last, the graduates sat stunned, witnesses to corporate empire's fall and potential rebirth in a single hour. Professor Chen smiled. Sometimes the best revenge was giving someone the chance to change. 3 months after the graduation ceremony, David sat in what used to be Marcus Thompson's office, reviewing transformation plans for Thompson Tech. Sarah knocked and entered. The board approved everything. Full transparency protocols, ethical AI development, and the new scholarship foundation. And your father? Cooperating fully with authorities. His testimony has exposed industry-wide corruption. She paused. He asks about you. Down in the lobby, James Walker walked slowly, supported by Elena, his successful treatment finally showing results. Employees nodded respectfully. The new company culture starting from the ground up. Mr. Walker, Professor Chen greeted them. Ready for your first day? James smiled. The new workplace safety division needed a director who understood ground-level risks. Who better than a former janitor who'd lived them? Marcus Thompson sat in his home office, under house arrest, reviewing documents. His mother's letter lay open beside corporate records he was annotating for investigators. The prosecution offered a deal, his lawyer said. No deals, Marcus replied. Full confession, every detail. The lawyer blinked. That could mean marriage. I know exactly what it means. It's time. At Harvard, Dean Richardson unveiled the Katherine Thompson Memorial Scholarship for underprivileged students. The first recipient, a janitor's daughter from Detroit. Elena organized employment programs for maintenance staff, her own experience driving her commitment to change. Professor Chen's research center opened, dedicated to ethical AI development. The sign outside read, Integrity in Innovation. David's algorithm, now transparent and public, became the industry standard for detecting corporate fraud. Tech giants scrambled to clean up their practices. In the hospital wing named after James Walker, Sarah gave free coding classes to maintenance staff's children. Your father's different, David told her during a break. Prison-facing does that, she replied. But I think it started with your speech. Marcus watched the company's transformation on news reports. His cell phone buzzed. A message from David. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., family meeting. Family. The word hit him hard. Dean Richardson visited Marcus that evening. Katherine would be proud. Finally. Not of what I did, Marcus said. No, of what you're doing now. In David's new office, a frame held his father's old Harvard janitor, ID. Beside it, a photo of James teaching young coders in the company's new education center. Elena hung a similar photo in her office. Her first day back with her son. The moment she chose redemption over regret. The company stock was recovering. Not from deception, but from genuine innovation. David's algorithm, built from his father's cleaning patterns, revolutionized more than just Thompson Tech. Sarah decorated Marcus's old office for tomorrow's meeting. On the wall, she hung the Harvard graduation program, David's speech notes, and her father's handwritten confession. Below them, a new company motto: integrity cleans better than deception. The autumn sun painted Harvard's oldest buildings in shades of gold as crowds gathered for what the media called the redemption speech. Television trucks lined the historic streets, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like modern spires among the ancient architecture. The auditorium, built to hold 1,000, now strained to contain nearly twice that number. Marcus Thompson stood in a small preparation room, adjusting his simple gray suit. A deliberate choice that cost less than the ties he used to wear. His ankle monitor peeked from beneath his pant leg, a reminder of justice served. Sarah helped straighten his collar, her eyes meeting his in the mirror. "You don't have to go through with this, Dad," she said softly. "Yes, I do." He touched the letter in his pocket, his mother's last words, now public record. "It's time." Outside, James Walker arrived in a chauffeured car. Another deliberate choice. The same car that once only carried executives now transported the man who used to clean its parking space. He wore a tailored suit that somehow didn't hide the dignity he'd always carried in his janitor's uniform. Elena held his arm, her wedding ring catching the light, restored like their marriage, stronger for having been broken. Professor Chen guided a group of maintenance workers' children through the crowd, their new tablets, gifts from Walker Technologies, clutched in eager hands. Each child wore a small pin. Future Harvard scholar, Walker Foundation. David Walker, the new CEO of what was still legally Thompson Tech, sat quietly reviewing his speech. The manila envelope in his lap contained documents that would change more than just company names. At exactly 10 a.m., Marcus Thompson approached the podium. The ankle monitor caught the light as he adjusted the microphone, and he made no attempt to hide it. The auditorium fell silent. "A year ago," he began, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance, "my empire crumbled right here. Today, I'm grateful it did." He paused, eyes finding his daughter, inherent. "Some buildings need to fall so better ones can rise." In the front row, Elena wiped a tear, remembering her own desperate escape 18 years ago. James squeezed her hand, their years of separation dissolved in forgiveness. "Thompson Tech's transformation isn't just about corporate ethics," Marcus continued. "It's about the American dream, the real one, not built on privilege or power, but on integrity, hard work, and second chances." The company's stock price, displayed on screens throughout the room, showed numbers that would have seemed impossible a year ago. But more impressive were the other numbers scrolling beneath. Thousands of new educational scholarships, hundreds of reformed corporate policies, dozens of ethical AI innovations. "We've doubled our value," Marcus acknowledged, "but not through market manipulation or data theft. We grew by doing what my mother always dreamed possible, running a tech company with a conscience." The cameras clicked as he pulled out a thick folder. "Today, we announced the James Walker Initiative. Every maintenance staff member's child, in every major university across America, will receive full educational support. No strings, no hidden agendas, no pride to swallow. Just opportunity, freely given, the way it always should have been." James straightened in his seat as photographs appeared on the giant screens. His years of cleaning Harvard's halls, his son studying beside him, their shared dreams rising from polished floors. "But this initiative goes beyond education," Marcus continued. "We're establishing training programs, career development paths, and leadership opportunities for maintenance staff nationwide. Because dignity isn't given with a title, it's earned through work, any kind of work, done with integrity." Professor Chen watched from his seat, his new title as Dean of Harvard Business School still feeling surreal. His research center had become the industry standard. His theories about ethical AI implementation now required reading in tech companies worldwide. Behind him sat dozens of his new students, children of maintenance workers, Their future's no longer limited by circumstance. But there's more. Marcus continued, his voice wavering slightly. Today marks my official resignation as company founder. The audience stirred. Sarah nodded encouragingly as her father pulled out another document. Thompson Tech needs leadership that embodies its new values, said. The board has unanimously selected David Walker as CEO. But not just CEO. He looked directly at David. From tomorrow, we become Walker Technologies. The auditorium erupted. David stood, straightening his tie, the manila envelope still in his hands. As he walked to the podium, memories flooded back. The smell of cleaning supplies, the sound of his father's mop, the weight of borrowed textbooks. The American dream isn't about rising above others, David addressed the crowd, opening the envelope. It's about lifting people up as you climb. Success isn't measured in dollars, but in lives changed. He revealed the first document, the original Harvard Library visitor log from 18 years ago, the day Marcus had mocked him. This page reminded me where we started. Now it will hang in our headquarters lobby, next to our new mission statement. Character, like these halls, must be cleaned and maintained daily. Screens throughout the auditorium displayed images of the company's transformation. The old Thompson Tech Tower, once a monument to corporate excess, now housed the largest free coding academy in America. The executive dining room had become a community education center. Every floor had a story of change. We're not just changing names, David continued. We're changing lives. Every employee now owns company shares. Every office has a learning center. Every maintenance worker has a path to advancement, if they choose it. He gestured to a group of former maintenance workers, now dressed in business attire. Meet our new board of ethics. People who understand the value of honest work, who know what it means to build something from the ground up. They'll ensure we never forget our roots. Sarah stood next, presenting the company's new educational initiative. Starting today, Walker Technologies launches the largest STEM education program for underprivileged students in American history. But we're not just offering classes, we're offering futures. The screens showed construction sites at universities nationwide, new dormitories, specifically for maintenance workers' families pursuing education. No more choosing between work and dreams, Sarah announced. No more children studying next to mop buckets. We're building spaces where dignity and opportunity meet. Marcus watched from his seat, remembering his mother's words. Power without purpose is just privilege. His year under house arrest had taught him more than any Harvard degree. Teaching business ethics to underprivileged students had shown him what real value meant. The ceremony continued, as Elena and James took the stage together. Elena spoke first, her voice strong. 18 years ago, I made a desperate choice. I thought I had to choose between my family's pride and my son's future. Today, we're ending that false choice. James stepped forward, still carrying himself with the same dignity he had when mopping floors. I used to tell David that clean floors were like clean consciences. They need daily maintenance. Today, we're not just changing a company's name, we're changing what success means. The future was unfolding on screens around the auditorium. Walker Technologies' new headquarters would include a museum dedicated to maintenance workers' stories. Every major university would have a Walker Foundation office, staffed by former maintenance workers who understood the challenges their colleagues faced. But our biggest announcement, David said, reaching into the envelope one last time, is about the future. He revealed a blueprint, a massive complex rising from the heart of Boston. The Katherine Thompson Center for Educational Equity, a place where any child, regardless of background, can access world-class education resources. Marcus's tears flowed freely now as his mother's dream took physical form. The center would stand where Thompson Tech's first office once was. Privilege transformed into purpose. The company's new logo appeared on the screens. A simple mop crossed with a pen, symbolizing the dignity of all work. Below it, 3 lines of text. Character, like these halls, must be cleaned and maintained daily. James Walker. Success is measured by the doors we open for others. David Walker. Redemption begins when we clean up our own mistakes. Marcus Thompson. Professor Chen introduced the first class of Walker Scholars. 50 maintenance workers' children who would begin at Harvard next semester. Each wore a pin combining Harvard's shield with a crossed mop and pen. As the ceremony neared its end, an unexpected guest took the podium. An elderly janitor from another university, his uniform worn with pride. Today, he said, his voice trembling, my granddaughter got accepted to medical school. The Walker Foundation isn't just giving money, They're giving permission to dream. The impact rippled through the audience. This wasn't just corporate restructuring, it was social reconstruction. Every maintenance worker's child could now see a future beyond borrowed textbooks and hidden studies. David unveiled the final initiative, a nationwide network of support centers for working families pursuing education. No more choosing between work and school, he announced. No more hidden talent lost to circumstance. The ceremony concluded with a powerful gesture. Maintenance workers from universities nationwide received tablets containing free coding course access. Their children received college preparation packages, breaking the cycle of limited opportunities. As the audience filed out, Marcus stopped by the library. The small plaque he'd commissioned gleamed in the afternoon light. Below it, a guest book lay open, its first entry in a child's handwriting. Today I learned that even people who clean floors can change the world. The Harvard buildings stood proud against the autumn sky, their names changing but their foundations stronger. Inside the library, a new generation of students studied, regardless of background or status. Among them sat children of maintenance staff, their paths no longer limited by circumstance. James and Elena walked hand in hand through the halls he once cleaned, stopping to watch a young girl helping her father mop while reading an advanced physics book. David joined them, smiling at the familiar scene. "It's really happening," Elena whispered. "It always was," James replied. "We just needed someone to open the door." The sun set on Harvard's campus, its light touching both the highest spires and the humblest corners. In the gathering dusk, the Walker Technologies logo glowed against the Boston skyline, a beacon of change in a city built on tradition. The American dream had been redefined, not in gold, but in the quiet dignity of doing what's right. Even the smallest acts of integrity, it turned out, could clean the highest halls of power. David's last act of the day was to place his old borrowed textbooks in the library, now stamped with "Free to all who dare to dream." The future of Walker Technologies and the American dream itself was in good hands. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of Harvard's halls, another child of another janitor was beginning their own story of change. The end. Hey there! If this story touched your heart and reminded you that integrity and hard work still matter in today's world, hit that like button right now. Share in the comments your own story of overcoming obstacles, or tell us what you would have done in David's shoes. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that prove the American dream is alive and well. Remember, no janitor's son ever cleaned these halls. He was too busy becoming their owner. Hit that bell icon, and let's keep proving that success isn't about where you start, but how you climb. Every like, every share, every subscription helps us spread stories that matter. Sometimes the highest towers are built by those who once mopped their foundations.